Hey everybody, I'm excited to tell you guys about a very special transit tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. The moon will transit 5 degrees of Sagittarius on July 24th. This is a very fast transit, and the time leading up to this date is the most important. So today, July 23rd, when I'm filming this. If you miss this activation, don't worry about it. You are going to see in a few minutes how it's connected to a larger chain of events. So sit tight and enjoy the show. I'll explain everything step by step. So to understand what's going on, we want to first focus on Pluto and Uranus. Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius and Uranus is in Gemini. These are both air signs, and the property of their trine, their connection, has a lot to do with the development of technology, technological progress, accelerationism, all sorts of different concepts that have to do with technology pushing us as a whole world in a new direction. So under this transit, what we're going to experience is technological expansion, and this is creating a separation to lived experiences. The reason the separation is happening is that the development of technology under these transits is outpacing our experience of it. So before we learn to live and integrate the technology that's upon us, we're already onto something more advanced, more decentered from our experience, and it kind of isolates us. It isolates us from where things are going. And so a lot of people are experiencing concern about, what's going to come next. It also isolates us from each other because we are not adapting socially to the progress of technology fast enough. So here is the trine between Pluto and Uranus. There's Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini. So that's a trine between Aquarius and Gemini. This trine is going to keep holding off and on until the late 20s, maybe even early 30s if you use wide orbs. And so this is what's propelling that technological expansion. But as you saw in the chart, and I used a reduced chart so you can see it better, there's also Neptune, Jupiter, and Moon, okay? That's the moon at 5 degrees of Sagittarius. So Neptune is in Aries, Jupiter is in Leo, and the moon is in Sagittarius, which are fire signs. This is called a grand fire trine. This is the energy of fire working really well together. And the moon is our most personal transit besides the sun, which represents literally our lived experience through emotion and the mind. And Jupiter represents the bridge between the outer planets and our personal experiences. It's a bit of a social planet, but think of social in terms of your family, your community, your network, people you know. So people closer to you than, let's say, what Pluto represents or what Uranus represents. So these are people you actually know. And Neptune appears actually in two different positions. I'll explain that in a minute. But for the purpose of the grand fire trine, it's connecting with the moon and Jupiter, and it's representing social dynamics, the zeitgeist, regions, countries, nations, big groups of people who may not actually know each other. So there's a connection point through the grand fire trine, which is a point of awareness of our first person lived experience, the bridge, which is Jupiter, communities, networks, friends, families, and the larger group, which is the zeitgeist, the country, the nation, the ethnic group, the religious group, whatever, of people who may not know each other, but who identify under the same symbolism and have some kind of shared connection. Neptune, in its biggest representation, does represent the whole world. So when we kind of zoom out our scope, it does represent all human beings living in the world right now. But for our purposes to understand, it's people you don't know that you are in a collective with, okay? And there's a very powerful connection when the moon transits Sagittarius that connects us to the bridge and the larger collective. So here's our trine between the moon and Jupiter, trine between moon and Neptune, and trine between Neptune and Jupiter. And that's a grand fire trine. It represents a connection between all the transits in the fire element. And even in these reduced charts, I actually include the sun. So the sun is nearing its Cazimi point with Jupiter. So it's very much connected to the transit of the moon. But by the time the sun reaches Jupiter, the moon will be moving towards its full moon position in Aquarius. We'll talk about that in another video. But we have this grand fire trine that's connecting our lived experiences through the bridge, Jupiter, to the larger collective. So there's a connection point of awareness and a synchronicity between what's going on in the world around us and our personal lives or our personal experiences. So Neptune is fulfilling two roles in its position right now because of the moon's transit. So we're going back to Pluto and Uranus for a minute. So you see here, this is called a minor grand trine, and I add a sextile because it connects two sextiles and a trine together. It's the lesser version of the grand trines, which are connected between three different trines. So it's a smaller version. This is the synchronicity between the outer planets that we are experiencing right now. There's Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. So remember what I said to you guys about how Pluto and Uranus represent like the technological progress, and Neptune kind of here has to do with, or anywhere else has to do with, our connection to other people who we don't know. This position between Pluto and Uranus, which is the midpoint, reconciles that technological progress into new cultural outcomes. So that's one thing that Neptune is doing. So all of that technological progress we are experiencing, Neptune is finding a new social or cultural outcome to what's going on. It's changing society. Now that can be a harmonious thing, but this can also be read as an ideological superstructure, which is the product of technological advancement in order to build new ideologies that validate the new power positions that are being created by the technology. So the technology is empowering different types of imperialism or different types of power, right? That's over all of us, or it's directed at some of us. And Neptune can also, in this position, so two things are happening. Neptune can also create a language around what that technology means and a propaganda around it. So it creates culture because we use the technology and then create culture through that. But it also creates this ideological superstructure, right? The propaganda of the technology. That's when people justify why that technology is good, but the reason they're justifying it is to gain more power for what the technology represents for them. So it's a pretty big concept, but just understand that the position of Neptune between Pluto and Uranus helps us because we adapt to whatever is happening in the world, in this case technology. A new art is formed, new film, movies, whatever, literature. But there's this also narrative that's being constructed about and validating the power of the technology that sometimes benefits only select people. So there's a political side to it too. So that's number one. There's two parts to it, A and B, right? So there's a good side, which is our cultural advancement and progress. And then there's that propaganda side that legitimizes the power or power inequalities that technology can create. And the other role of Neptune, number two, is that grand fire trine. So here's our grand fire trine again that's activated tomorrow morning, but its lead up is today. And this is deeply to do with our lived experience, seeing the technology come up and seeing how we're going to use it or how it makes sense to us. So the grand fire trine becomes a point of cultural expression and creation, and also a connection point between people and people within these new systems. This is when we are finding ourselves, understanding how this new technology works for us best. So we're learning, we're adapting, we're connecting with each other through Jupiter. right? We're figuring out ways to use the technology that benefits us. For creatives out there, this is a growth spurt because you're interacting in a creative way with these new things, with these new tools. And so you're creating new things. So July 23rd, 24th should be quite a expressive day for you. So if technology is not your thing, a grand fire trine like this also helps you to find ways around it. So, if it feels like everybody's using AI in your work, maybe you'll find a workaround that allows you to use your hands in some way that technology is not that good at mimicking. Maybe something about you creates value in a way that technology cannot mimic. So maybe under this grand fire trine, you find that way. It's very beautiful. So the grand fire trine today and tomorrow is a culturally significant moment and a turning point. And you know how I was mentioning how we're separated from each other? Well, this is a point of connection. So that's very important too, because the Pluto-Uranus pushing ahead can be very isolating. So under this connection, it's within that technology push. We are adapting, we are connecting, and through that, we are asserting humanness into that cold dynamic. For those of you who already know some of the astrology, you can see this as a envelope, right? So we have that mediation point, the twofold process of Neptune. It's two roles interacting with our first person experiences, connecting us with other people, but also in a systems way, connecting us to the technology, right, as a collective in a significantly cultural moment that produces new cultural outcomes and awareness. So if you're watching this on July 24th, great, enjoy the day, take note, pay attention. But if you're watching after, this is not a standalone transit. This is connected to other transits. So I'm going to explain to you the sequence of events to do with that now. So you're not missing something and you should still watch this video. 24th of July in the morning, 6 a.m. Pacific time, is the activation. And around that, some new point of awareness, something new comes into your life that connects you with technology, with other people, with the world. It's a very nice point of connection. So I laid down two cards here. I was gifted these two decks for Tarot Talk. So I do tarot-only videos on Tarot Talk, and people have been gifting me decks to read with. I will post there soon. I just had technical issues and adapting to a busier posting schedule on Veroosh. So we're going back to that. But I didn't actually look at these cards. I just pulled them. So I just want to take a look now, if you don't mind. Okay, so I love this card. This is the card of... This is like the Knight of Swords, but this is called the Animal of Swords in this deck. This is the deck that I've been super excited about. It's called the Primordial Tarot. I've covered up all the body images, so I knew that there was going to be a fair bit of representation. This is a fine art deck, so sometimes people paint, the body as it is in those. So I've painted over those, and we'll use that for the channels. So the Knight of Swords is that... I love how it's called the Animal of Swords. It makes the Knight of Swords so active. And this is like us up against technology, right? Kind of being taken aback, afraid. So in this case, the technology is the spear that the hunter is holding. And the animal, the wolf in this case, is growling ferociously, right? So there's this kind of a fear, a potential threat from the technology, and standing up to it in a way. And the second deck is the Grimm Tales. So here you go. I haven't looked at either card, so I didn't know which one I got. I just wanted to introduce this. And thank you so much to the person who got me these decks. So we have 10 of Pentacles, which is wonderful because that's Neptune, right? That's the connection to our communities, whether it's family, friends, cultural identities, religious identities. There's a wealth there, there's a vault full of value that we share together. And so this is the resistance point the value of us as communities together, as cultures, being able to mediate the onset of technological progress, right? So it's where we use the value of us as people collectively to weigh up against a potential threat, the spear, right? Banding together and then using that value in order to put pressure on it and to subjugate it in a way, to subjugate the technology to work for us so that we don't have to work for it. But in a personal dynamic, what this represents to me is an awareness point, understanding how things are developing. Maybe this is a moment when some of you are worried about technology and where it's going. And through this point, you find some path for yourself, some point of identity. So it's a really nice transit. So let's see in terms of timelines, because there's a really cool timeline attached to this, how that's going to evolve and grow. Okay, so today's transit takes us back to November 25th, 2011. That was a solar eclipse that happened at 5 degrees of Sagittarius. What I found interesting about this chart was that Uranus is at 0 degrees of Aries on that day, or at that year, those months. This is the exact position of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction earlier this year. So the planet of technology, which is Uranus, is connecting to the same conjunction planetary cycle that Neptune and Saturn began this year. That's like a 30-year cycle. That's a long time. Another interesting thing about this chart is that there's a grand Earth trine between Pluto, Jupiter, and Mars. Let me show you that here so you can see it easier. Uranus is easy to see, but these two aren't. That's a pretty powerful connection that really grounds the energy. So something under this position, this is where the moon is at on the 24th, initiated a way forward. Uranus is a very forward-moving, forward-thinking planet. There it is right there. It's the same position as Neptune is in now, right? And that's connecting Neptune and the moon position on July 24th to that date, 2011. And solar eclipses usually represent initiation of something new. When a solar eclipse is with the North Node, it's a completely new path. It doesn't have to do with the past. So for you, something may have begun, culture shifted, society shifted, you started seeing a new path, maybe new technology entered your life. There was an air of modern coming in, something new, something contemporary, something shifted around that time. And the grand Earth trine between Pluto, Jupiter, and Mars, which is supportive, allowed for a cycle of financial mobility forward at that time, a very supported energy. So when you're looking back to that date, there could have been like a cultural shift for you personally, or maybe a fork in the road that you took a different direction. Maybe you started dressing different, maybe different music started to resonate. Oh, my music changed around that time for sure. So look for technological changes that inspired you, that you may be using now, all that stuff. So November 25th, 2011 looks like a good date to me, but that's not the main story. The main story is actually 2027 next year through 2028. And we're talking about Neptune because Neptune is going to stay relatively close in this position. So it's also the connecting point of the envelope between the grand fire trine and the minor grand trine. So connecting the outer planets Pluto and Uranus to Mars and Jupiter and the Sun. So in 2027, Neptune is going to form planetary cycles. That's the relationship between two planets with 3 transits from this degree: the Sun, Venus, and Mercury. And all of these are going to last 1 year. That means between 2027 and 2028, this evolution, this cultural evolution builds and expands. And a lot of the things that are evolving and starting for you now that you're becoming aware of in relation to the technology, like new trends, music, literature, ideas, whatever, that's going to develop very strongly. Neptune is going to be overseeing all of that. Now in 2028, there's more. Neptune doesn't move very quickly. So it will go retrograde and forward and come back to the relatively the same degree, and then form planetary cycles again with Sun, Venus, and Mercury for a year, okay? So that's between 2028 and 2029. And you guys know that 2028 seems to be a critical year. So this is 2027 is going to have one feeling about it. 2028, from what I can tell, is a refining year. So we're looking through the things that we found and refining them, organizing them, throwing certain aspects of them away, keeping certain things. And then we have a 2-year Mars cycle with Neptune from 2028 to 2030. That's the big initiation moving forward. And just looking at the astrology right now, Mars is at the tail end of a lot of these sequences. So Mars seems to be initiating and pushing forward a lot right now. So 2028 to 2030, we may be seeing an outcome, specific outcomes. Now this is globally, so we may see very new trends, and kind of people will be on to new topics of interest and ideas. But personally, you're going to shift through this time, and it's going to connect to 2011. Now, our story doesn't end there. 2029 is also very big for this transit. So in 2029, in March, we get essentially a syzygy. So here it is right there. We have Mercury, the Sun, and Venus. Mercury's moving towards the Sun in a superior conjunction. And on this chart, Venus has already moved past the Sun, also in a superior conjunction. So they're both becoming evening stars, okay? So processing, this idea of processing, transforming, right? Evening stars have to do with like working through lived experience, knowing what you have accumulated and growing from that. So in 2029, in March, we get 2 planetary cycles. Now these are shorter because Venus and Mercury are inner planets, so they're not a full year, but there are activation points between March and whenever is the next Mercury retrograde or Venus retrograde from this degree. So for Venus and the Sun, that's going to be about 300 days. And for Mercury and the Sun, that's only about 45 days, so a month and a half. So there will be their synodic cycle in 2029 that is going to activate and build upon these planetary cycles with Neptune in 2027, 2029. So in 2026, under this envelope Grand Trine, minor Grand Trine sextile that we introduced with, we're kind of getting a glimpse into cultural changes, personal changes, vibe changes that will be underway in 2027 to 2028 and really take off in 2029. Before we head into the tarot, I want to show you something. I saw something really cool in the chart. So under this syzygy, that syzygy just means there's 3 of them together. Mars is actually going to be directly opposite in Libra at 4 degrees. And look what we were just looking at here. Mars is in the middle of its planetary cycle with Neptune, right? From 2028 and 2029. It will be in the middle of that planetary cycle and in opposition to the Sun when it's making its planetary cycles with Venus and Mercury. And if you've been watching my channel, we get major activations starting in 2029 in a way forward, moving forward again after refining in 2028. It's all very, very cool stuff. So let's take a look at what's going on for you. It's a collective message in tarot, but I hope it gives you some insight. I'll be using the new cards, which I'm very thankful for. They're beautiful. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about this one, so pay attention. So what we're looking at is how culture is going to impact us, what kind of a change we're under with this energy. So I'm starting with the Grimm brothers. We have the 2 of Cups. Well, that's a nice start. I strongly felt when I was doing the astrology that a main aspect of this is connection. Social media has become increasingly gamified and depersonalized. That means that people and systems have come in to make it work technically, right? Without too much humanness in mind. It's maximizing profits, maximizing turnover, whatever. And I think many people have felt increasingly isolated in systems that were supposed to bring us together. So this is a nice message to me, symbolizing that there's this connection that's forming between people. What I feel like is that it's the workaround. It's how people are resistant to being taken apart from each other and how they fight together to be together. And I don't mean just romance or relationships. I mean closeness of a humankind. Conversations, just imperfection. One of the things that media has created right now, or technology, is that everything's monitored. So people are not letting their guard down, and rightfully so. But that prevents meaningful human connections. Meaningful human connections often reside in sites of imperfection, and it's that transgressive imperfection that is the inside joke that brings people together, right? So it's this Two of Cups. There's this kind of a humility about this energy. I really like it. Okay, so let's see what else is going on. So we have the High Priestess, insights. For all of you who have deep intuitive powers, you're seeing a lot going on. If you're a trendy person, some people have the ability to see trends and they're like ahead of the curve. They're wearing what everybody else will be wearing in 5 years. I think that your light bulbs are going off right now. You're like, oh, this is going to happen. This color, this style, this whatever. I feel like this is a huge transit for cultural forecasting. People kind of who understand where things are going. Then we have the Star. These are such beautiful cards. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. So this is something faded. Now this is the Aquarian activation. This has a lot to do with Pluto and systems, things that are not necessarily human-centered, right? Now, technology can be used to elevate the human world as well, but the way that we're using it, especially in terms of these newer technologies, it's not very focused on us at all. It's more about displacing us from our own experience, let's say it that way. Okay, and then we have the Seven of Cups. You're experiencing some kind of vision, but at the end of this transit on the 24th, I could expect that you're not fully clear, that there's still big question marks. So this is a fast transit. Moon moves over a degree every 2 hours or so. So it's here today, gone tomorrow sort of thing. And while we get something similar next month, there's the moon. This is August 20th. Jupiter will have moved into the 11th degree by then, and Neptune and Pluto will have retrograded back to 3. So that's a pretty big orb for Jupiter to be off. On August 20th, we get a similar activation. So if you're kind of like trying to catch this energy of awareness, wait for that day. But July 24th is really that moment of understanding and seeing where things are going, maybe your position in the world and where you need to be. It's going to leave you with questions because we have to go through those dates that I mentioned, the planetary cycles in 2027, 2028, and then the big planetary cycles in 2029. I forgot to mention that in 2030 there's an eclipse. Sorry, I got nervous that this is getting long. In 2030 there's an eclipse also activating these positions. They'll be in that Sagittarian position again on November 28th, 2030. So by November 28th, 2030, that's when you're going to be really clear on the things that you're becoming aware of now. So expect to have like a strong moment of clarity here, but then some kind of disillusionment because you feel like it was like a fleeting star, something that you weren't able to fully grasp. Okay, then we have the Eight of Pentacles, and then we have the Hierophant. Now this is the Primordial Tarot. I am obsessed. See, this is me covering things up. Even the statue of Venus is probably off limits, so we'll respect that. And the Last Judgment card. I think this is a call to action to look at the world around us and follow through in a particular direction. I think this is saying that at this time something is becoming clear about who you are, who you're meant to be as these technologies change, and the direction that you're meant to go. And a decision might be being made, even if it's implicitly. It's something, you know, grooming is a bad thing, right? But there's also good grooming in the sense that stars prepare us for future events. So that 2011 eclipse leads into the activation now, and then planetary cycles between 2027 and 2030, they'll play out with Mars, and then the eclipse in 2030 activates again with a solar eclipse. It's a new moon. So there's this feeling of excitement, maybe understanding. For me, the Hierophant has a lot to do with lived experiences. So like having accumulated certain amounts of knowledge, you have a vision of where you want to go. So this is a day of visions. It's a beautiful day. And this is work. So you're going to have to work to adjust yourself to the frequency that you are seeing. But when you adjust yourself, when you make that commitment, which is the Last Judgment, that is more powerful than interim doubts. Not all the information is here yet. The technology hasn't progressed yet far enough. So you're going to be left with kind of a weird feeling on the 25th, 24th. You're going to feel like you saw something, but you didn't really see it, you know? It's kind of deja vu feeling a little bit. Let's look at Lenormand. So we have, this is in my deck. This is like oneness of being. And then we have house. A lot of these changes start in the home. This isn't like you running into the world and saying, Eureka, I got it. This is something that you're figuring out at home. I think it's going to lead many people into financial success. That's why I think this transit is a good one. And then we have the Fox. Cleverness is needed for this path ahead. And then we have Dharma. See, this is a powerful card. This is, again, only in my deck, but it has to do with like a commitment to a way forward. So I think we're heading into a very specific path. We are adapting to the technology as best as we can, collectively, but also individually. And I think that's what this reading is all about. There will be some doubt because the moon is fast and it's going to give you that moment of awareness, and then it's not going to make sense after. And you're going to have to wait till 2027 for it to make sense again. And that's when you start to practically work your way into the energy. Look back in your life and see pivotal moments where your life took a turn. Maybe it's November 2011. Under those pivotal moments, you took a different direction. You changed. At the time, it was just something that was new on your horizon, but retroactively, when you look back, you may see that there's a fundamental shift that happened for you then. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.